Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we got Ian Ross back, and Ian flew in from Chicago, and today we're going to be talking about overcoming the top objections in real estate. I am on a mission to create 100 millionaires. The information on the show alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you'll take consistent action, you will become one. And we know the fastest way to become a millionaire is to get good at sales. So our sales community was launched a couple of months ago, and the community members in there are already closing more sales. If you haven't checked it out yet, go to salesdisruptors.com to surround yourself with sales assassins from across the country. And the show is brought to you by our sister company, InvestorLift. Get access to over 2 million cash buyers across the country. Go to investorlift.com, put in Disruptors to get 10% off. And if you get value out of the show, please hit that subscribe button. That way we can all grow together. Now, we got the 5 objections, but before we get into that, it's now been officially 2 months since we've launched the sales community. So, you're the one that's driving it. Talk to me, like, what are you seeing so far inside our community?
It's amazing. It's absolutely awesome to see the people who show up constantly. I mean, we're up to 3 calls a week now. Inside the community. We've also got like a long list of basically all the things you've ever charged money for in terms of like courses and anything that's an information product in that sense that we used to charge thousands and thousands of dollars for is now available like at your fingertips like that. So people are joining just to go through that. And then we also have 3 calls a week. So we do like a curriculum thing, breaking down a concept, something involving sales conversations. So it could be focusing on your tonality, how to deal with a certain type of objection, how to cold call the first 30 seconds on a phone. Like we deal with something very particular in terms of the curriculum. Then we do a call review on Wednesday. So we go over the calls of someone in the community. So people being like, I'm not quite sure how this went. I'd love to have this reviewed. They send an email and we review it together and work on that together. And then we have probably my favorite on Friday. We do Friday sales role playing, which just so many people are getting so much out of, which is bringing your scenarios, whatever they are, where revenue is on the line, and getting a chance to practice them with me, with the community, and really hone your skills. And so like you get to be the prospect or homeowner you know so well, I'll be you, and then we switch and we iterate and improve until you feel like your skills have actually leveled up.
Yeah.
So
So before we continue there, right? So before we get back to role playing, you're talking about call review. And the thing I like most about call review is we know what we know, right? And then what we know, we also are aware of things that we may or may not be getting right? And one of the most difficult challenges in live action is remembering all these different things, remembering all these, whether it's establishing the rules, it's mirroring correctly, actually hearing what they said, picking up what they said, the way they said it, and so on. And it's really hard to do all those things when there's money on the line. The analogy I use quite a bit is basketball. Look, I know I'm supposed to bend my knees, right? I'm supposed to have my elbow pointed at the rim, follow through, keep my elbows up, keep my eyes, straight. And so I know these things.
Sure.
But when I'm off, it's pretty quick. I just ask someone, hey, what looks off? And they'll tell me, it's like, oh, okay, great. And then I can correct it in real time. I do Kung Fu, right? I do martial arts. And I am fully aware of what I'm supposed to be doing. The brain knows it.
Yeah.
The brain knows it, but the body does not. And so we talk about these concepts of nowhere to somewhere and then somewhere to mastery. So from nowhere to somewhere, this is when we're just learning the material. And that's what you do. You're talking about the fundamentals, the principles, right? You got to learn the principles, but it's not enough to be aware of the principles. You got to go apply it.
Very true.
In call review, it sounds like this is the opportunity for us to go apply it and then kind of like break it down, do film review, just like an NFL team, right? Hey, when the receiver dipped his hips over here, like what were you looking at? Why were you not also, adjusting when he was about to make a move?
Yeah, let's look at the tape.
Let's look at the tape.
Let's break down the game film and see what actually happened.
Yeah, so talk to, expand a little bit, like what is actually happening in call review?
So, and I'll second a couple things you said. First off, there'll be times I think I've had a really good phone call. And when I go back to listen, I'm not wrong. I was like, yeah, that went well. The general outcome was right. But when you're actually breaking it down because you're no longer in it, you're no longer thinking about the next thing to say, hearing what they're saying next, money's on the line, which in terms of the basketball thing is having Shaq's hand in your face, right? When there's real money on the line. And so I'll go back and listen to sales calls and be like, I had no idea I stuttered while talking about that part in my head. I had no idea that when they said yes and I heard yes. But now that there's a little bit of distance, we're reviewing the game tape. It's like that yes was not really a yes. That was a counterfeit yes, and I was just too in it. And so when we do these call reviews, people bringing in the real conversations that they are having in the community. So someone's calling a landlord, someone else is calling a homeowner, just whatever the situation is, and they've recorded these calls, and we're going over them. We're breaking it down from the get-go, and I stop and we pause and I ask questions, and then occasionally we'll break off into little role plays about a thing. We often try and get maybe two people's calls in on a call review, but the reality is you can get so in depth when you discover a concept or something that someone was like, I didn't even realize I was missing this thing. And that's the perfect moment for it to be a lesson in there, to focus in on that thing you weren't even aware you were doing, and to ask more questions and role play that. So the call review it's an exciting thing that we added to officially have 3 calls per week right now.
Yeah, and then the role playing, the thing that I've enjoyed hearing these stories, whether it was Brian Smith, Zach Gerard, or someone else, and they go in there and they're like, hey, we did a role play. Ian told us, make sure you say this way. And then they go run the appointment, right? Because you guys role play real scenarios.
Yes.
Like, here's the scenario I'm dealing with. And they go to the appointment and they said this way. And by the way, I got a contract, right? So I think one of them was Brian. He was role playing on the way to the appointment. You want to talk about that one?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're about to go over objections, and the reality is most sales training would be as in depth as we could get on this podcast, which is just talking about a generic scenario and how to overcome a sort of general idea. But what we do in the community is what's this actual situation? What are you actually going through with this one person? What do you know about them? How do you feel like they would respond? And then we get to focus on that exact scenario, which is, it's how people are actually locking up contracts, because it's not just oh, I think I can conceptualize that for this deal. It's no, I should say that for this person.
Yeah.
So that's
because they're bringing it to you with the seller's information. They've done the intake call.
Yep.
They know, they have an idea of how this appointment is going to go.
Yeah.
And they're role playing based off the information they're feeding it to you.
Exactly.
And that's how they're more prepared.
Yeah, exactly. And what in Brian's instance, I don't want to get to too much of his specifics in his words, but he was driving to renegotiate for a seller finance deal. And the person he was talking to wanted interest. So all I'll go into for him, because I'll let him explain it at another time. But that's the thing he was going through. And he wanted to figure out how to present this conversation around interest. And we prepared. I was like, all right, come up with 2 scenarios. Because he was driving there, right? We didn't even know on the call he was driving. We just knew he was in the car. I said, come up with 2 possible things that would make sense. And then I want you to pitch them to me. So he did that. And I heard his things. And I gave him a little bit of feedback. And I said, okay, now I'm going to do my version of it to you. We did that. And he's like, great. All right, do that one more time to me. And he did it back after I did it to him. And he's like, great. And he flipped his camera around. This is on a live role-playing call in the community. He's like, I'm here. I pulled up. I'm going to go in now. I'll let you guys know. And he updates the community and goes, he took option number 2. We just literally, on the drive up to this home, we role-played the scenario. I think there were maybe 9 or 10 of us on that call. I worked with him directly on this. And then he just got out of the call, went in, did what we just did, and fixed the problem.
Yeah. And so we got the 3 calls a week. And on top of the 3 calls a week, we obviously have an active community. We have all the courses. Something we added this week was the role play channel and the accountability channel.
Yeah. So the role-playing calls, I mean, and oftentimes we break out into role-playing in the call review because we want to work with the person I'm talking to. But still, the people get so much value actually role-playing the scenario out. You get I think I've heard it like cotton in the cheeks. People struggle to actually say the words. They think, oh, I know how to speak to my friend. I'll know how to speak when I'm in the home or on the phone, and a lot of money is on the line. And it's just like, it's a Shaq's hand in your face as opposed to just at the free throw. And so we wanted to make sure that people had a chance in the community to practice with each other and go through this and improve together outside of even just the 3 times I'm running calls, that they can do it together and improve on their own. And also I'm hopping in on there as they pop up just to give them a little bonus time to get the benefit there.
And then the accountability channel, we created that yesterday. So I am back in operations, right? So our team's got just a little bit smaller, at least for the time being. So I'm in there and I'm in Salesforce and I'm, doing follow-ups, this and that. And so I'm just turning on the camera in Discord and I'm just calling leads.
I have to ask you, how much, has there ever been a time when someone offered you money to kind of just like sit next to you, or can I shadow you for a day? Like,
all the time.
All
like,
the
hey,
time.
can I just stop by and just watch? He's like, no, that's creepy.
Well, good news. We now have a whole setup where you can creepily watch Steve in the community.
Yeah. So like on Tuesdays, for me, with all the different operations we got going on, Tuesday is dedicated solely to wholesaling, right? So I'm in the bullpen with the team and I'm going through Salesforce and I'm talking to sellers, and some calls are good, some calls are not. And on top of me, me making calls, we're also recording these as well, so that, not only can you see me live real time, but also, the best calls. Like we did one yesterday where, we had a lady who was not on board. 2 out of 3 people were on board. The third person who wasn't there was not on board. And so we had a 15-minute conversation on the phone. It's all recorded so they can hear like how I got her on board with the situation. So now we have all 3 people that are necessary to get this deal done. So that's all available inside the community.
And we're creating libraries around that too. Because like, as you can imagine, running 3 calls a week, role-playing a lot of different scenarios, we're coming up with a lot of different challenges. And so we're starting to document them and name them, because when you go, hey, I'm dealing with this one problem, I'm having this situation in probate. Has anyone ever dealt with this? Yeah, we actually got footage of Steve Trang going through this exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so much of what I've learned in the community, which is crazy, is people being like, oh, let me just use those words. Let me just say what you said. And they're going to get to see you actually go through real live calls, not totally fake, just like actually real things. You're actually calling this, and people can just watch this in the community now, which is a huge thing.
And I think the other thing too is, and we're right about to get to the objection. So I think one of the biggest things that we see when people are looking for objection handlers, this and that, is my old coach used to call this the book of magic answers. Right? It's like, hey, just give me exactly what to say for this situation. And could we make that book? Yeah, but it'd be super thick, and it would be so many different one-off.
It would be so thick
situations.
no one would ever use it. It would be so thick people go, I'm not going to open that book. It's too big.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what I think is really more critical, more important, is really the framework.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do I overcome these objections? How do I overcome these obstacles that show up? So again, we're going to go over a few of these in a moment, but that's what we're offering inside the community. It's on top of my entire library of all the different products I've created that we sold for thousands and thousands of dollars over the years, you get 3 calls a week with Ian. So we've been asking you guys to text your biggest objections for the last few weeks, and I'm looking in here, we got just shy of 50 objections submitted here. And you know what's fascinating? And I'm looking at these 50. They basically boiled down to like 5 or 6 objections.
Yeah, it's what most people realize. They think there's thousands of objections. New salespeople think they could say so many different things to me. There's really not that many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you kind of shared there was a Jordan Belfort story.
Yeah, I think it was him creating the straight line system. His famous thing that got him to be the Wolf of Wall Street was that he was talking to his early Stratton Oakmont sales guys, and they couldn't close a barn door. And he was just like, well, what's the problem? And they said to him, oh, there's thousands of objections. They're giving us thousands of objections. We never know what to say. And he just went, okay, let's do this now. Because he was closing, but they weren't. It's like, well, let's write down every objection. And they wrote it down and there were like 6.
Yeah.
And they thought there were thousands. And it's like, okay, can you deal with 6 different objections? And then one of the crazy things is the difference in some of the 6 is also not that big. When you actually understand how to ask questions and how to listen to those responses, the variations of those 6 is still pretty minor.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's start off. So first objection, price. Now this is an interesting objection, right? Your offer is too low, or I won't go any lower.
Right.
So talk to me about the price objection.
Yeah, that's and it's the one we got most frequently. And we say 5, there are various aspects of it, like, oh, that's too low, or I would never accept that. All different variations of price.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you want to do when you're hearing an objection, and especially as you're running a sales process, is you want to have, before you even get to that situation, it makes sense to have already been prepared for what you think their objections are likely to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say, if you do the process right, price is realistically the only thing they should really get any objection on, theoretically, because the way you present everything else is often, you can deal with the objection before they even encounter it. So when it comes to the offer is too low, something I always like to think about of an objection is that that's the prospect, the homeowner in this case, is raising a shield. They're holding a shield up saying, I want to stop the sales process. I'm putting a shield in front of you and now we have to stop. And most sales training says, oh, they raise a shield, hit the shield.
Mm-hmm.
But if you hit a shield and you don't knock it out of their hand, what happens when you hit someone's shield? They dig in harder. And so that's why I always talk about validating someone's concerns and not agreeing with their concerns.
Mm-hmm.
This is really powerful, because if you go, yeah, I definitely can't, like, that's shooting yourself in the foot if you're agreeing with them.
Yeah, our offer is too low.
Yeah, our offer is too low. Okay, where do we go from here? I guess it's over, right? Yeah. Versus, I totally understand why you would think that. I've heard that before. Tell me, what were you thinking, or what were you hoping to hear?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, and this is the key with most objections, is that you should probably ask a question. Most sales training might be like, oh, they give you an objection. I say 3 lines, and now I can close. I can close anyone.
They're just melting in my hands.
Yeah, they're melting in my. Yeah, it's like a pickup artist, but for high ticket. I mean, it's insane. It's not real. It's fantasy.
So I think there's a few different things, right? So if you follow our process, price, not to say it's not an objection, but their reaction to your price really shouldn't be so bad, because before you make your offer, they should have told you what they're willing to accept, right? We talk about it. We call it extracting price. They should be saying the number first. I think that's step 1. Step 2 is we typically want to get someone emotional before we talk about price. Price is an issue in the absence of value, right? Like, if I see no value here, then the only thing that matters here is price. But what we know, because we've been doing this business for some time now, price, although is important, is the last important thing. So, the example I've used is, who here listening to this podcast right now lives in the cheapest house in the city? Highly unlikely, right? And so typically when you buy your house, you need a certain number of bedrooms, a certain number of bathrooms, maybe a garage, size yard, pool, whatever, proximity to a school, proximity to family. There are all sorts of considerations. And then after all those considerations are settled, the cheapest house that checks all those boxes.
Yes.
Right? And so, like, typically, if you're dealing with a homeowner who's focused solely on price, the question is, do they need more certainty? Do they need peace of mind? Do they need speed, convenience, hassle-free, whatever? Have we talked about these things and talked about how important it is to solve this problem and the consequence of not solving this problem? Yeah.
That line, that price is an important thing, but it's the last important thing. Mm-hmm. I remember when I heard you say that is rings very true and is very profound. Yeah. How often do we run sales trainings where, especially people who are maybe newer in acquisitions, or like, what's the biggest thing you're encountering? The price. Homeowners don't like the price. They don't like the price. That's the thing over and over again. And the first thing before we even get into the nuances of handling the objection, is the mindset of it's the last important thing.
Yeah.
So if that's the only thing you're hearing, you've done everything. Everything else has to be, you must be doing other things wrong. There's no other way you're running everything right. That's the only thing you're hearing in terms of running an ideal sales process.
Right.
It stood out to me about like buying a car. I bought a car cash not long ago, and I spent a decent amount. It wasn't an insane amount of money, but it was felt like a lot of money to me writing that check. And I was only arguing with them about price, but it was not that big of a deal. Like it really, like that was the only thing I ever gave them as an objection. Mm-hmm. But the reality is there were like 20 other variables that the car checked, and now I was only talking about price.
Well, you needed an SUV.
I did need an SUV.
Right. So you needed an SUV because you just had you're about to have a baby.
Yes. I had a very pregnant wife at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
You're about to have a baby. So there were certain requirements of the car.
Right.
Right. So you couldn't just go out and buy a Honda Civic.
No. In fact, we even looked at a different SUV that had too small of a back for the car seat we'd already bought. So it wasn't even just SUV. It had to be we'd already looked at a different SUV, and the back didn't fit for like the backward facing car seat. Like this car actually, it was even more criteria before we doing that they never, those salespeople shockingly never asked me about those other things. So many people miss the mark of assuming the wrong information, and therefore they go, oh, they're just so concerned about price. It's like, you don't even know any of the other things.
Right.
And if you can provide enough certainty in the other things, price really is the last important thing.
Yeah. So something that, you guys might have heard me say on a video on Instagram or whatever, right? It's like, I might summarize it like, okay, so right now it seems to me we're about $30,000, apart from what a cash buyer is willing to pay and what you're willing to accept. And, earlier in our conversation, you were saying it was really, really important for you to be there when your grandson is born in Florida. So, I mean, it kind of sounds like right now, the $30,000 difference is more important than actually being there when your grandson's born.
Very powerful.
And they're like, well, what's more important? Is it the price of being there when your grandson's being born, right? Now, obviously, tonality and everything else is going to be super important, but if you didn't ask all those questions about what's important to them in this sale, then yeah, price is the only thing that matters.
Right.
Right? But if you find out, oh, well, I need to be there for my grandson. This is the first one. This is my oldest son. This is the first grandson in our, patriarchy or whatever.
Sure.
It's a different conversation.
Yes. Another example of that might be that plenty of people listening to this podcast, I'm sure, are encountering when they're making offers on properties, if that's their approach. They're talking to landlords, people who don't own, or who don't live in that property they're calling about. They own it, but they have tenants, or it's vacant, whatever, but it's not their actual home. And so they think, oh, this person has absolutely no pain whatsoever, so how could they ever accept the offer? That might be true, but if you haven't asked them enough questions, learned enough about them, you might not have asked, like, is there anything else, if we were to get you a price that would make sense for you, did you have any other anything else you were eyeing in the area? Because oftentimes when I've talked to, investors like yourself, they often have their ears to the ground, listening and looking for other deals. Is there maybe a multifamily deal or something that has a better return than this one single family home that you've had your eye on? And they might go, well, yeah, if I sold this, I would also, obviously I want to avoid the capital gains tax, so I would roll it into this. Gotcha. Tell me about that. And then they would tell me about that, and I would ask more questions, and then I would build up how much gain they could have from the next deal.
Right.
And then when it comes time to price, so I've already built this in before we even get to price. That's one of the keys. It's like here's this line about price. Yeah, but I built this other thing in. When it's finally time and I don't like the price. Okay, so it sounds like we're $30,000 off from what you feel is acceptable. But if we got this done, this next deal could be making you $17,000 a month. What am I missing in terms of getting this done? How much do you want to prioritize getting into that next deal so you can actually get to that $17,000 a month? Does this $30,000, would it prevent you from getting $17,000 a month? Because it sounds like in 2 months that would cover that and then some. And so that approach is like, oh, that's true. And the only objection they gave me was price, but because I extracted other things before we even got to price, I had all this ammunition available. I had all these throwing knives and everything I needed to if we were imagining myself as a sales assistant, to get the kill, to close the deal, to succeed in that conversation, I had the tools in front of me because I'd built it in ahead of time so that when they raise the shield of price of an issue, I understand why you say that. I am curious though, because of this other thing, it sounds like that 30,000 is what's holding you back from making 17,000 a month. And that approach totally changes. It melts the idea of price being the issue.
Right. Well, we're reminding them that they said to us there's something that was really important.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's unbelievable how much people just forget what they just said to you.
Yeah.
And if you remind them saying, you've said this, I'm not telling you this. I'm not saying, you could go invest this somewhere else.
Right.
I asked you and then reminded you. It's your own words against you. That will defeat them far more often than the idea of let me convince you of this thing.
So we just gave you a thesis on price, right?
Yeah.
But
I often do that when talking about sales.
But let's just take a step back now, right? So how do we overcome this objection, right? So assuming, right, we did everything right here. Now we go into your offer is too low, right? The defensive thing is what do you mean my offer is too low? Or it's I can come up, right? It's kind of a defensive reaction. So, what we encourage is to mirror it. So, it's Ian, your offer is just too low.
My offer is too low?
Yeah, it's really hoping to get more money than that.
Okay. How much more were you hoping to be getting?
These other, I'm getting these things in the mail. They're $20,000 higher.
Okay. And if we could pay that $20,000, what would happen next?
I guess I'd go with you.
Okay. It feels like I'm still missing something. Is it really just the 20,000, or is there something else that I'm missing?
No. Right now it's just 20,000.
Okay. So, in terms of that gap, tell me a little bit more about these mailers. Why haven't you gone with them before? If you've already been getting that price in the mail.
Well, I went to their website and it was just I put in my address and this and that, and that was the number they gave me.
Okay, so they gave you that number, but they didn't actually really try and buy your house for that number. It sounds like.
Yeah, but you heard what Ian did is he mirrored. Price is too low. What were you hoping to hear? He didn't just jump up and give more money.
Right.
Right. He didn't create this distance. So I think when we're overcoming price, the first thing we got to do is acknowledge, mirror that hey, y'all, I heard you say it's too low, and then what were you hoping to hear? Ball's in their court. Right. So I think that's the first thing. The other thing too, we didn't really talk about this. We never make a formal offer initially. First thing we do is we ask them how much they're hoping to walk away with. And after that, it's these cash buyers nearby, here's what they're offering. Right. We're always suggesting what cash buyers nearby are paying. We're never just making an offer. So
yeah, because when they have that negative reaction, it's not to you.
Yeah.
I thought that was an outrageous.
These vultures.
Yeah, it's crazy.
These people are ridiculous. Yeah. So that's the first one. Price. All right. Second one. Right. Objection number 2. I'll think about it, get back to you. Let me think about it. I need to think about it. Other variations of think about it.
Yeah. This is super universal. And sometimes every now and again, it's one of the few objections where you can still do everything right and they still might have just lied to you and they actually do need to think it over. It's rare, but one of the main things, you never want that to be your default reaction to go, oh yeah, they just definitely need to think it over.
Yeah.
Because when you think that, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
100%.
Almost every time. So it's weird that way in that sometimes it is true, but it's that reality you need to forget.
Well, no one's ever gone back. Not no one, but less than 1% of the population has ever gone back and ran spreadsheets.
It's pretty low.
Right. They sat down at the kitchen table, mathed it out. That doesn't happen. That no one does this, right? I leave here, right? Ian's at my house. He leaves. What do? I pull up my phone. Oh, I got some Facebook notifications. I got some text messages. I'm texting my friends back. I'm checking Facebook. I'm going to check my emails. Oh, work called. Got to call work back. And by the time Ian does his follow-up again, how much time have I actually sat down and thought about this?
Literally, like as you were closing the door and leaving. That was it.
That's it.
That amount of time.
That's how much people actually think about it. So anyway, continue.
It's very rare. So you want to encounter this. Is the big thing, not unlike price, is that we deal with this up front.
Mm-hmm.
This objection is rarer for our process than for a lot of other wholesaling processes or just general sales processes where they're trying to set them up to potentially be like, hey, maybe you're going to need time to think this over.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're not even talking about it to begin with. We establish the rules up front that we are not, that we're not pushing for it has to be a yes. We're not aggressive in our conversations. We are assertive that it's either going to be a yes or a no. And one of the ways you can do that is by, and I've talked to the community quite a bit about this, because community at a very affordable price point, we get a variety of people in there. We get people in there who are like just about to do their first deal, getting, just starting the process and getting all the knowledge there. We've got someone else in there who's got a team of 7 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it totally varies. And so when I'm encountering people who are like just getting going, a lot of times their experiences are coming from some type of a background where the process, they're not familiar with this idea that you can say it's either yes or no, and that's totally fine up front. That think about it is a no. So there is no think about it. It's simply going to be a no.
Right.
And when you've set that up front, usually you just have to, much like we talked about before, remind them of that. And they might often go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And so then we can talk that through. I would usually imply, rather, like you'll see a lot of sales training that goes, what do you need to think about it? Is it me? Is it the value of the price? Like so aggressive about it versus like, okay. It's interesting that you're saying that. I'm a little confused. When we talked a little bit earlier, you said you'd be comfortable giving me a yes or a no today, but it seems like I must have done something wrong to lose your trust to make it so that you don't feel comfortable saying no to me. It's like, no, it's not that. I made this really negative thing. It's not, no, I like you. You're really, I trust you. It feels good to work with you. I just, this other thing I have to do. I just have to talk to so-and-so.
Uncovering the black swans.
We uncover the black swans as I talk about it.
So, just real quick, we'll kind of breeze through it real quick, we talk about establishing the rules. Here's what it typically sounds like. Hey, Ian, thank you for inviting me into your home. Before we get started, can I just share with you how these conversations typically go?
Sure.
So these appointments, they sometimes go an hour, hour and a half. That's still a good amount of time for you.
Yeah, I have that blocked out.
All right, appreciate it. Typically, homeowners we've worked with in the past want to know how this process works, how much money they're going to walk away with, and when exactly they're going to get their money. Am I missing anything?
No, that's all I can think of. Yeah, that's what's on my mind.
All right, awesome. And obviously, for me to figure out if this is a house that we're going to purchase, I'm going to have to ask you some questions. And some of these questions may come across as personal. Will that be okay?
Sure, yeah, of course.
All right, thank you. And at the end, naturally, one of two things will happen. Either we buy your home or we don't. Either way is okay. If the price we offer you doesn't work, if you're just anytime just feeling this is not a good fit, would you just feel comfortable telling me no?
Definitely. I got no problem telling people no when I'm not interested.
All right, I appreciate that. Likewise, if we figure out at the end this is a house that we're not going to buy, you can be okay with that?
Yes. Yeah. If you're not going to buy it, I appreciate you being a straight shooter with me.
Okay, great. And if it does make sense for us to work together, what that means is we're going to take everything you and I talked about today, and we're just going to put it all in writing. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
All right. Can I just share with you my biggest fear?
Okay, yeah.
You seem really friendly, and some of the homeowners in the past, they were really afraid to hurt my feelings. Instead of telling me no, they told me that they needed to think about it. Can you promise me you won't do that? I promise you cannot hurt my feelings.
Sure. No problem.
All right. And if I hear anything besides a yes or no at the end, I'm just going to take that as a no. Is that fair?
That's totally fair.
Right. So that's how we establish rules. The very beginning, right? First 5 to 15 minutes of the appointment. The other thing that triggers, I need to think about it, which I was shoot myself in the foot forever, was, well, Ian, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's how I tried to sell my first solar panel was, what do you guys think? Do you want this? Yeah, it's a lot to think about. I guess I'll think it over. Yeah.
So the worst closing question in the history of closing is, what do you think? So don't ask any questions that involve the word think. So we got a few more objections here, but before we do that, we got Lance, and he's actually in town, and he's going to jump on real quick and just kind of share with us his experience in working with sales disruptors. So let's go ahead and get Lance on the screen. All right, Lance. Hey, thank you for joining us on today's very special show. Tell us, what's your experience been like so far with sales disruptors?
It's been really good. I was looking for a solution to be a better communicator, and when I found you, I felt like, and Ian, it aligned with my personality. Like Grant Cardone and Tom Ferry's like sell, 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 no matter what. But I feel like I'm not serving my clients well that way. So, being here at Disruptors and training with Ian and yourself has really helped me set the boundaries, frame the conversation, and really be a better communicator overall.
So the training experience you had beforehand was really more along the lines of it felt like you had to hard close.
That, or not closing at all, not asking for the business. So there's that, and just mellowing out my need to wait to talk.
Yeah,
I'm a wait to talker.
That is.
I don't listen very.
That's definitely one of the hardest parts. Is trying to you want to get your words in, but they're still talking. I know that's one of the hardest things to resist. So there've been a couple of scenarios that you've worked through with Ian. Can you share with us some of those scenarios?
I have a gentleman. We've had this listing up for 2 years, and it was at 975. We got offers at 850, 875, 920, and he said no. And finally, with the market shift, he decided to go with the 925 offer. And then, the pest inspections and all the inspections, and the buyer was asking for the world. And he's the type where if you put a dime in his hand, he's going to squeeze out $1. He's just going to boom, there's 4 quarters right there. And so just learning to listen and let him run out of gas, and then change the frame. Well, have you thought about this? What if this happened? And then he was like, well, they're not negotiating in good faith. I'm like, sir, if I was the buyer's agent, I would be representing you the same way. I would be trying to get my buyers the best deal I could. And it mellowed him out, and he was really happy then. He referred me to a client coming out from another country, and they're actually here right now. But unfortunately, my associate is having to handle the showing and stuff. And it's a $2 million deal. So can't be mad about that.
So the process has helped you get just a few more commission dollars along the way.
Yeah, and it's taking the stress out of my life too, because like I said, I'm waiting to talk and just listening and listening to their concerns, and not already having the solution, because sometimes my solution isn't their solution.
Yeah.
For instance, I had a lady call me, and she was like, "Oh, there's squatters in my home. It's my daughter. This, and this." And I'm like, "Well, we'll just evict her." And she's like, "No." Well, we got to ask enough questions, right? And she's like, "I just want to sell it for cash." I'm like, "I can help you there." So, I'm getting to kick her daughter out because her daughter's a piece of trash, and I get a flip out of the deal. Owner financing, right? What better deal is that?
So you were there to solve a problem with a solution that they didn't want, and then you've now adjusted and wait for their solution, and then just work with their solution.
Yeah, it's a smarter way to go. Sometimes. Hey.
I'm curious, Lance, what are you mentioned a couple instances. Is there anything you can think of where you had a situation where you felt not quite sure how to proceed in terms of what your actual conversation should be, and then we were able to sort of dissect it and then role play it back and forth in a way that gave you actionable steps to actually go make more money with the next conversation you have with that person?
Specifically, the gentleman I was talking about for the home that was on the market, like, just reaffirming what he says, like validating his points, and then redirecting him and gently nudging him along. Because he got pretty heated during the negotiations, and we were able to make it happen for everybody. So it was a good thing.
And you said you looked at previous sales trainings, but what was the disconnect between like the type of content or training you'd seen before and your style of selling that was not working for you? Like, what was that disconnect?
I just feel like Grant Cardone and Tom Ferry, they're always going for the close, right?
Right.
Not necessarily putting their clients' needs first. I'm in a fortunate position where I've done quite well in real estate. I don't need the next deal to pay my bills. I live way below my means. So trying to find something where I can actually put the client's needs first versus my own has been a huge help for me.
And I think like what's key, right, is like when we first connected, you were already successful in real estate. You were already a top performing realtor, flipper in your market. So it wasn't like you
Correct.
needed our sales training for you to make ends meet. You were already successful. You were just looking for the next edge to take you to the next level. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's 100%. And I'm also incorporating my children in this process as well. I have a 21-year-old son who's getting his license. My daughter's 17. And it's about elevating your communication skills, because communication is a lost art, especially in my children's age group, because all they do is stare at the phone most times. Yeah, exactly. We get a grocery store, and I'm like, you need to work here because you're going to have lots of conversations, and you need to practice the things that we learn with Ian on our weekly coaching calls. You need to implement the little bit, mirroring, just complimenting people, just having good conversations, really. Because it's about, I'm developing my children, I'm not raising them. That's how I look at that.
Yeah,
So that's
a powerful way of looking at it.
Definitely.
Anything else you want to ask?
Yeah, I guess the last question I really have for you is that if you were to think about what could have been, let me phrase it this way. If you were to think that there was someone who's maybe being held back from taking action to invest in themselves in a soft skill, like in training in communication, in sales, and actually how to have effective conversations when real money is on the line, how would you talk to them about deciding whether or not they want to take action?
I feel like I want to go Dave Goggins right now, but I'll refrain. You have to do it, man. You have to invest in yourself. The best skills you could develop are communication skills, and then everything else will fall in line from there. That's my wholehearted opinion. And my children are here with me. That's why I'm here, because communication, being able to effectively have conversations with people, understand their needs, and then try to solve those problems. That's really the key.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Lance, for taking time out of your schedule. I know you got your family here ready to go out and feast. So appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right. See ya.
Take care. Bye.
All right. So there you go, Lance. Really appreciate him. And again, this guy was already successful before he connected with us, but he wanted to invest in himself, get that next edge, which I totally respect because I'm the same exact way. And so it's really cool that not only has he believed and really dived deep into sales, but he's got his family involved. So the next objection, which is interesting to me, is I'm not interested in selling.
That's a tough one, and depending on the circumstance.
Yeah. I mean, is that an objection?
Well, it's certainly raising up a shield. It's slowing the process down. I mean, it depends the context because it's kind of it's a little vague, and but usually you wouldn't be getting that the previous things we talked about, price and I need to think it over. You're gonna get that at the end of your consultation of talking to them on the phone or being in the home across from them at the kitchen table. That one would make sense, I think, the very first time you talk to them. It would be very bizarre if you were in the home for an hour and at the end they go, I'm actually not interested in selling.
Yeah, so it really shouldn't come up at the appointment.
It really shouldn't.
Really should come up in prospecting.
It's a qualification process.
Yeah, so I think we're probably finding this when someone's cold calling or texting. I imagine is when this is coming up. And if you're calling or texting and they're telling you they're not interested, I don't really look at that as an objection. I think this is just kind of like, let's move away.
They made your job easier. They disqualify themselves. Yeah. Don't waste your time on them anymore. If they're telling you in the prospecting stage, I am not interested in this, they just did you a favor and saved you the time of, well, what's your offer? And playing with your emotions, and you start thinking about how much you could make. They just made you money because you can spend your time on other people.
Right. So, Brian Manley, he was a guest last week on Pardon the Disruption. I love the way he put it. We are in the sifting and sorting business first, right? Prospecting is interesting because prospecting is the only activity I'm aware of, that I can think of at least, that's both marketing and sales at the same time. Yeah. Right? Everything's marketing or sales. Prospecting is legit sales and marketing at the same time. And so, if they're telling you they're not interested, that is them doing us a favor. Now, there's a slight nuance here. Let's say it's 4th of July and they fill out a web form, right?
Right.
But you're grilling, you got people over, and you don't get back to them on the 6th of July.
Okay.
Ian, I'm no longer interested in selling. That's a slightly different one.
Yes, that's quite different. Right. I'm no longer interested implies they might have just had interests.
Right. Maybe they had a blowout fight on the 4th of July.
Right. Yeah. There's something to work with there.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone that's no longer, it's not quite one of the objections that was submitted, but I think that might be more helpful for people listening.
That's true. Okay. So for someone listening, if someone says, I'm no longer interested in selling, let's say you're in a prospecting situation, you've called them on the phone, they were a PPC lead, and you're like, oh, this looks great. Let me reach back out. For whatever reason, I'm no longer interested, even though it feels like this is a hot lead. This just happened. Why are they no longer interested?
Yeah, they filled out the form. They've told you they want a number significantly before Zillow. They want to sell in less than 30 days. Everything here says this is a hot prospect.
This is where labeling comes into use very, very well, because especially in prospecting, you will get lied to a lot. This is a tough thing for a lot of people to realize that you're just being lied to all the time. You might have things are going to be shopped. People are just going to be like, they're busy. And so rather than go, yeah, I am interested, but I'm busy and dealing with that nuance, they just say, I'm not interested because they're busy. That's the nature of being busy. And you go, oh, but this person doesn't want to sell. So there's a possibility there. I would say if it's like, I'm no longer interested and we have information to think that this should have been a lead, I would usually want to assume that means that they've already sold. Or oh, great. Congratulations. You must have gotten a real estate agent and now you're going to list it on the MLS. And I'm doing that because it is way easier for someone to lie in the answer to a question when they're already in a lying mode than to let an incorrect statement sit and not try and correct it, not make the truth be real. And so they will go, well, no, it's not that situation. Oh, okay. So then you must have already sold with talking to another investor and have already gotten under contract. No, it's not that I've already got under contract. Gotcha. Okay. Well, since you filled this out it looks like 36 hours ago, and now you're no longer interested in selling, it feels like I must be missing something.
Yeah.
What changed? Something happened? And because I've already eliminated these other things and they've already opened up a little bit more, by them being honest, correcting two statements, it's much easier then also for them to be honest about answering that question.
Right.
Because they've just been honest twice in a row rather than being compelled to lie to get you off the phone.
Yeah. So a lot of people I'm no longer just selling. It's like, oh, okay, well, hang up. Or what happened? Like, well, that's not your damn business.
Right.
Right. So we assume, oh, you already sold your house. No, I haven't sold that. Oh, okay, but you already dealt with the matter at hand. Well, not really. Well, then I don't understand.
Right.
And like, well, here's what's going on. And it's just crazy. People will fill in that blank after they've corrected you.
Because they've been truthful twice, by correcting you that when it's time to ask the question, since it's the human nature thing. It's like if they've already been honest twice in correcting you, it's much easier for them answering that more broader open-ended question of what's happening. It's much easier for them to be open about that because they were just honest twice in a row. It's like just an easy sort of pattern for human behavior.
So the next objection is I need to talk to my wife. But before we do that, we got someone I'm really excited to talk to. We got Mr. Zach Gerard. If you guys have been paying attention to my social media, I'm basically like posting about this guy every single week, but I think for good reason. He's doing really, really well. So let's see what Zach's got to say. All right, Zach, thank you for joining us. You're one of the first members to join when we launched the sales community. I think 2 or 3 days after we launched it, you were in there and you were actively participating. I'd like to hear from you. How has your experience been since you joined the sales community?
Yeah. So thank you guys. First of all, I've had a lot of success because of this community. I think what it finally came down to, Steve, was I was tired of the free podcasts, the courses that were kind of just like a slide deck. And that's what I was getting. And I finally decided, all right, I've consumed all of the free content I can possibly consume. It's never ending if I don't decide to just get some skin in the game. And I think it was an investor lift Zoom call that you had come on.
Yeah.
And then, a couple of days later, my partner, Kim, she reached out. She's like, hey, you need to sign up for Steve's class. Like, just do it.
Yeah.
So, it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and I've learned so much that now I'm getting to the point where I'm creating habits because I'm overusing techniques.
Great.
But Ian catches them right away. So it's been great.
What are some things that you're like overdoing?
I guess just like knowing when someone's playing games and calling. So what I was doing, Steve, was I was calling out this guy's bluff a lot. And Ian was like, come on, man, you've had all this success falling on your sword. What happened to that? And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. So that was just a good role play session, and got that guy on the phone today, and it's going well. So
Awesome.
A lot of success from Ian.
What kind of business are you doing today since you've joined the community?
When you say business, what do you mean by
that? Contracts are you locking? How many contracts are you locking up a week, locking up a month?
Yeah, I think just like any other business, it's like it's ups and downs, but it's based on momentums. And we have a good team around us. I think when I started and I joined the community, we were. When was that, Steve? Do you know? Because I have all the dates right on my board. So May we had 3, and then I would assume probably joined right around the end of May, and then June we had 6, and I'm very superstitious, so I don't like to talk about my contracts before they hit the closing table, but there's more than a few up there waiting to close.
Yeah. So do you think you've, with the things the skills you've learned since you joined the community, you've doubled your production, quadrupled your production?
I would say probably quadrupled, because it's not just me in acquisitions. It's now, if I'm talking to the disposition manager and he goes, hey, how should I word this? I'm like, oh, no, stop telling this guy what's going on. Yeah. Assume the negative, let him correct you. Yeah. And just those minor adjustments that I can help others on the team out with. If maybe Kim's not around, because Kim's also on here. So just everyday conversations, have just absolutely multiplied our business.
What are some of the things you feel like you maybe had an idea of but didn't have solidified down in terms of those soft communication skills before you joined community, that now you feel that aspect of those skills are more honed and more dialed in to the point where you've quadrupled your production?
Yeah, I read Never Split the Difference, so I thought I understood Chris Voss's mirroring techniques and tactics. But that's the thing. It's like reading a book or listening to a podcast. I can do it over and over again until I'm blue in the face. But until I'm role playing it with an actual person or talking through the scenario with another group of members in the community, it's that's what's really helped me. So there's been a lot of tools that like I'll consume every day on Instagram and social media. It's just your sales content that you see everywhere from all the gurus. But it takes it to a different level when you can go work on that with a group of people, and especially you guys who obviously know what you're doing.
So, because I will tell you, you are probably the most active community member in the role plays, which I know sometimes you're often nervous about. You're like, I don't want to be talking. I'm like, no, everyone has the opportunity to talk. Take advantage of it. And the person who's taking advantage of it has quadrupled their production. And so much so you're also helping your other team members with the skills you've been using. So talk to me about the role play.
Yeah. So before I guess talking about the role play, I think the funniest part is because obviously I'm never going to tell you this, but I will now since you asked. It is at the worst time every single week for me. Every single session is right in the middle of primetime calling hours. And I heard a quote one time that success is built on inconvenience. So I showed up for every single call, even though I thought, I think I've learned a lot from Ian over the past 2 months. There can't be more. Every single time I've learned something that has led to the closing of a contract. So I get so mad when I see the clock change. I'm like, I got to do role play right in the middle of a really good session. And I hop on and it's worth it every single time. So your question, how's the role play?
Yeah.
It's been fantastic.
That's awesome.
to say the least. I'm a very black and white guy. I want to know exactly how to do something. And if I'm doing it wrong, just tell me. Ian, if you watch the call replays, because they're all easily accessible to all of us, you see my head going down the whole time we're role playing because I'm writing down every word he says. And then I'm just reading it like a script on my phone calls. It's not rocket science. It's very easy. And the more and more I'm reading down those scripts, the more and more I'm just training my muscle memory.
I could say for me, I read all the books, right? I went through all the trainings. And when I was getting trained by someone else, the difference from reading the books, watching the podcast, this and that, to actually having a trainer I can interact with, the biggest game changer for me was working on the tonality. Getting the tone right, getting the pacing right, getting the pitch right, as well as intentionally actively listening. Have you found that to be the case for you as well?
I'm laughing because if you couldn't tell, one of my biggest weaknesses is over communicating and talking when I shouldn't be talking. And Ian has helped me understand how to be quiet, and also how just because you know everything doesn't mean you have to tell everyone in the room you know everything. Sometimes you have to help the prospect realize the right answer, but it has to be their idea. And that has been the biggest game changer with Ian talking to me about communication and active listening.
How unnatural was that for you?
If you couldn't tell, it's been rough. It was very, very rough because that's the thing. I love diving deep into data. So a lot of times I do have the answers, but that doesn't mean other people want the answer coming from me because I'm just another sales guy at that point. And when that moment clicked and I made the shift to like, okay, I can still know the answer, but help them come up with that solution, not like it was my idea. That's changed the game entirely.
That's awesome. We're not supposed to count our commissions, right? We all know this. But if you were to project the way things are going right now, you were saying like in May, you guys put 3 in contract. What do you think you made in May approximately? And I think the follow-up question to that, let's say 6 months from now, how much do you think you're gonna be making a month with the new skills you have today? So starting where you were in May, and then where do you think you project to be within 6 months?
Yeah, so I'm sitting here thinking, so I guess it's interesting because I have a really, really good team around me working with me. It's not just me. So we don't just wholesale. We have a couple of exit strategies, but obviously the skills in the course have taught us, how to perfect all of them. We're doing a lot of flips ourselves in the market.
Awesome.
So it's kind of hard to say, exact assignment fee. But I would say before the course in May, I mean, under $100,000. And then I think after that, just it's up there. It's definitely multiplying. I don't know at this point, and I don't care to sit and count. It could be there's more deals to close.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my main priority's been. We're at the point where we're scaling, and it's hard to put a number on it and track the KPIs because it's going very well and we don't want to stop.
So would you say it's definitely more than $97 a month?
I think I could pay for my membership for the next 20 years with the amount of money that I've made from the things I've learned. So yeah, $97 is, I mean, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but if $97 isn't worth you and your future and the things that you can gain from it, then I don't know that you should be even watching this podcast. To be completely honest, I mean, come on, get some skin in the game. If somebody pays for your course, I mean, do you really care that much? And that was kind of my mentality every single time I hopped on these role play sessions with Ian. It was like, I paid for this. I'm going to go get my money's worth. And yeah,
that's exactly how
I don't
operate.
have to go more into that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I put the money in. I have to jump on this call. I can't, it's like going to a buffet, right? And not leaving with like a half empty stomach. Like you got to get maximum value out of it.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, people laugh at me all the time, and it doesn't bother me anymore. But if nobody's going to ask questions and I paid $97 and we got 20 minutes left, I'm going to ask every question I can until the buzzer hits. So yeah, I've taken full advantage, and it's obviously paying off. So
anything else you want to?
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, guys.
You're very
welcome. I'm thrilled to see the success you're having, and in particular,
keep going.
I'm thrilled to see the success
I was
you're having.
popping back.
And in particular, I'm most pleased at just seeing what an action taker you are. So it's very cool to like give someone advice and then see them take that advice so thoroughly that they're like, can you say that again? Because I'm writing it down actually. And they're not writing it down to shove into a desk drawer and say, I learned a thing today. They're writing it down because they're about to say it to someone on the phone as soon as we finish. And then you say it, and then you make more money than you've ever made in your life. That's a very cool feeling. So I'm thrilled to have you in the community. You're a really, really valuable member.
I appreciate it, Ian. It's been, I mean, I'll say it. It's not cheesy or cliche. You've changed my life. So thank you. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts on the team that I'm working with, sure, but the skills that you've taught me have been amazing. And obviously Steve as well. I think I've learned a little thing or two from your courses.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Really, really happy to hear that. And then, what Zach is doing, super genuine. For those of you guys that are learning how to work with someone else, like what you're doing right here is like my favorite thing when we're working with somebody. It's they show up, they take action, and they're grateful. Like as a person that's mentoring other people, like there's nothing that warms my heart more. It's I love seeing this, and I don't know if you know Gino Paloma, but like talking to you here, like it reminds me so much of Gino down in Atlanta. He's boy wonder. He's doing amazing things down in Atlanta. Multiple six figures a month. And I'm just talking to you. It's like it reminds me so much like when I was talking to Gino back in the day.
Interesting. I'll have to look them up. But yeah, I mean, I think you grow at the level you appreciate, and I've just been through a lot of stuff and been kind of screwed over by a lot of people. So to just have honest, genuine people in the community that are willing to help has just been awesome.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for hopping on. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
All right. See you in the community. I mean, that was awesome. So thank you again, Zach, for jumping on here. So it really is ultimately the most rewarding part about what we do, right? Getting to see someone take action, sharing what they learned, executing, and then letting us know about their successes. And it's not like we take any part of their commissions. They're just paying us the $97 a month. But to hear them talk about how we're changing their lives, like that tank can never be full.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable feeling. I can't lie. It makes me smile ear to ear hearing direct success stories for stuff we're doing in the community.
Yeah.
Like to hear what the community members, to really hear what the community members, it's making me stutter. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
To hear they're actually getting out of it and that it's changing their life, changing their communication skills. They're making more money than they ever have before. They're inspiring the rest of their team. And it's like I think I spent, I'm trying to remember. We just had a kid. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars at in hospital bills just to have a human being brought into this world. And it's just like thousands of dollars. It's insane how much this child has already cost me. But for $97 a month, we were already making him, I think he said he's quadrupling his production from before. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the next one, I need to talk to my wife. Now, this is weird. Who's getting this objection? Right? Are people getting these objections in real estate?
Maybe not as much. I guess it's, a proxy for I need to speak. There's another decision maker.
Higher authority. No. So I'm being facetious, right? So I need to talk to my wife. So I think there's a couple of different things. I think that fundamentally there are a couple of truths at hand here. First, because we're talking specifically about real estate, we got to understand more often than not, the wife is the actual decision maker.
Sure.
There are a lot of guys that I was fooled by over the years. Like, I'm the decision maker. Okay, well, the guy said he's the decision maker. Why would he lie to me? Why would he lie about that? Turns out everyone lies about whether the decision maker or not. I think Chris Voss says, like, if they use the words we, probably them. If they say the word I, it's probably not them. Right? Like, people will specifically lie about whether they are the decision maker or not. As a matter of fact, if you ask someone, are you the decision maker? And they're not, they have to lie, because to admit that they're not is to admit that they're powerless.
Yeah. Or if you're thinking in other sales cycles, it actually hurts you if they're not any. When I went to go buy that car cash, even though my wife had given me complete blessing to do whatever, when I was talking to the sales guys and the manager, I made my pregnant wife the villain in that conversation. She was the decision maker. I had no say in this because then they weren't arguing with me. They were arguing with the distant figure of my wife. It's such a powerful thing to not be the decision maker if you know how to do it right. So if you're asking, are you the decision maker? You're just shooting yourself in the foot in every which way.
Yeah, there's no way you win that question.
Yeah, it's not a good question.
So what do you do then when someone says, I need to talk to my wife about this?
The same way we have ways to set up the sales process before the end regarding price, regarding need to think it over, we should also have that same type of approach for, are you the decision maker? And oftentimes we want to rephrase, because decision maker is, first off, it's a sales term. Like, it's a thing that only salespeople say. Like, if you hear a salesperson say on a call, and then we'll circle back at the end, like, that's a salesperson speak. I remember the first time I heard someone say, and then when we finish this up, we'll circle back and see if there's any way we can help you. I'm like, only inside sales reps say circle back on the phone. Real human beings don't talk that way. Yeah. Decision maker does not come up in day-to-day life. So a better question I usually ask, or if you want to make a labeling statement, we can talk about that too. But a better question usually is, hey, when we go through this, I'm curious, because this is sometimes can be kind of a big decision. Is there anyone else who's going to just have some questions about how this process is going to go? Or is there anyone else you're going to want to make sure that you run your thoughts by about this, right? Rather than going, can you make the decision? Are you man enough or not? I go, is there anyone else who might have some questions about this? Just so we can prepare to make sure that you can better answer them.
Yeah.
And we deal with that up front. And that third person, if there is one, is a looming part of the figure. And it's much easier to be honest, like, oh yeah, my wife might have some questions, because that didn't cede their authority as the decision maker. Of course she'll have questions, but she'll do what I say at the end of the day. Don't you worry about that. Sure she will. Yeah. But yeah, so we want to try and discover if there are other decision makers without using the types of words or asking the types of questions that set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, and I think for us, right, if we're going to find out if there's a wife involved, we have to figure out, when we're establishing the rules, is she going to have final say or not? And, one of the way, if the guy says, oh, look, she has you don't have to worry about her. Like, I got this. The question I will ask specifically, you mean to tell me, if you and I agree today on a price, you don't even need to call her? And they, I need to call her. I was like, well, it seems readily apparent she is a decision maker, right?
Sure.
So we got to get her back on the phone. So one of the things, or reschedule the appointment. So, what we talk about a lot is, if someone says, I need to get my wife involved, you've got basically a business decision. You either want to run the appointment and refuse to make an offer, right? Get them emotional so that you can sell the idea of rescheduling an appointment, right? Or B, you leave right then and there, right? And you schedule, and again, you reschedule for another time. So one thing I would say, the story I always like to use is like, hey, Ian, I'm just curious. Has there ever been a time, maybe in the last 2 to 4 weeks, where your wife asked you to do something and then you did it exactly how you thought she wanted it done and you still got in trouble?
There has.
Yeah. I don't want the same thing to happen here. So I don't suppose it makes sense where we can sit down with you and your wife so that we can answer not just your questions and answers or your questions and concerns, but all of her questions and concerns as well.
Sure, that makes sense.
Right, and that's all we're doing, right? Is we're just looking out for the guy's safety, right? Like you don't want to get in trouble again, right?
Yeah, and what's really key for the listeners in this is that what we're doing, why we bring this stuff up earlier in the call, is like if these are the objections, like we asked for a while and got like almost 50 submissions, and we're barely have 5. Basically, we've got 5.
That was the last objection.
Okay, that was it. We had 5 out of it, right? Out of the 50 submissions. Is that if you know that this is that common in real estate to get this type of objection, that you should have built this into the actual process. And I've heard other sales trainers talk about like talking about the product and asking questions. That's like the easy part. The hard part is like closing. That's when stuff's on the line. That's when the closers go in there and get it. Yeah, sure. But also part of the reason that is the case is because when it's like the quote unquote closing stage, emotions are high. People are familiar. They've been pitched things before. They've tried to buy things before. They've tried to sell. They've bought this home. Like they're familiar with this process. So when tensions are up, they're more likely to lie to you about, no, I got to talk to someone or decision maker rather than just being like, I'm actually not interested. This price doesn't work, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so why we're doing this earlier is because since people lie and people play games, earlier in the conversation, they're not as tempted to because it's not the default time when they're used to playing games and lying because they're not on guard because they don't feel like they need to. So it's why we push for a yes or no up front rather than at the end. At the end, I feel pressured. Oh, this is. I don't like the idea. I want to think it over. Of course they feel that because we didn't establish that when emotions weren't high. I only brought it up when emotions were high right at the end. Yeah. You're doing it wrong if you're pushing hard to deal with the objections when it's actually time to go in for the close because their emotions are up and they're more likely to be resistant.
Yeah, and Lance talked about it earlier. Zach talked about this earlier. We kind of, mention it in passing, but like our sales process is to get the prospect to tell us what they want.
Yes.
And if they're telling us exactly what they want, it's up to us to figure out whether we want to do it or not.
Exactly.
We're not making random unsolicited. We're not making random offers that we don't know where it's going to land.
Yeah.
Right? We see the target. It's got the red light. It's got the smoke. It's got the flares. We know what the target is. We know exactly where it is. And we got to decide, or we get to decide, whether we want to do it or not. Versus I'm going to fire my shot. I hope it lands.
Yeah, we're trying to play poker where everyone's cards are turned up but ours.
Yeah.
Like that's the game we're trying to play. And when your process is, I run this blanketed process and just shoot out offers, you're not even seeing your own cards. You're blindfolded playing poker. Yeah. And there's no reason to blindfold yourself. If you do this right, you get everyone to turn their cards up.
What's that game we would play when we're drunk and you put the Indian poker?
It's something like I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's like that, but you get to see what's on your
yeah. So when you're playing I think it's Indian poker. Yeah, if you're playing that, then everyone gets to see your cards, but you.
Right.
Not an optimal situation. No. Right. We want to play poker where we can see everyone else's cards, but they can't see ours.
And that's what we're about in community is setting it up so everyone who joins is invested in each other's success, and we try and have it so that you are because these skills we can talk about it and you can listen to this podcast and you can watch it on YouTube or whatever and be like, wow, that's a really good line. But the same way you could watch Tiger Woods talk about how he swings a golf club, and you might go, wow, I'm going to apply that. It will never be the same as actually having an instructor who goes, no. What you're doing with your hand is a little bit here. Let me just adjust your hand. Now swing. Oh, now a little bit too far. All right. And that's what we're doing in the community. We're putting you in a situation where you can actually improve, like Tiger Woods is your personal golf instructor. Mm-hmm. You're not just, not to call myself Tiger Woods, but like you're not just watching the thing and hoping you're doing it right, mm-hmm. which you could still get way better than you were without anything before. That's still super valuable. But it's even better to have a personalized instructor talking you through it. And community is built around everyone trying to level up and grow together.
Absolutely. So I hope, we titled the show, How to Handle the Top Objections Real Estate. Apparently those are the top 5 objections in real estate. I think we did a decent job.
I think so. I hope so. We'll see.
Handling all of those. If, you like what Lance had to say, you like what Zach had to say, we invite you to join us inside the sales community for $97 a month. We genuinely want to see you change your life, right? Change the outcome for you, for your family. And, Ian is incredibly active in there. I'm in there every Tuesday now doing accountability with everyone else. I'm just going to be on the phones. So you want to see or hear what it sounds like when I'm on the phones. Again, we invite you to join us in the community. Any other message you want to wrap up before, or leave everyone with before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say the last thing to really grasp is that if you're thinking, okay, this sounds good, but like, I still don't know. You're still having that sort of hesitation about, and I know this might come off as a little pushy and salesy, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's like, you're having that hesitation is totally fine. But one of the things you have to ask yourself is, in this, like when it comes to the moment of like wanting to actually make the change, would I want to be the type of person who does make the change when it's time? And something I've noticed, I've watched Real Estate Disruptors for a very long time as a fan, and I've noticed there's, I think, the 2 most common setup for the multimillionaires who are incredibly successful who come on this podcast are, 1, they've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And 2, they've paid for coaching. They've paid for mentoring. They've paid to be in a mastermind. They've paid to level up skills to get them to that next place. And they've paid a lot more than $97 a month.
Yeah.
And so if you are hesitant, go to salesdisruptors.com. Check it out. We're getting amazing results for some of the members in there. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah. So we invite you guys to join us in there, and we hope to see you in there. See you guys later.
Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.